Hey guys, so I'm just making a quick video to talk about something that's very near and dear to me, and that is the genre of music called Grindcore. Now, on YouTube and everywhere, actually, there seems to be a lot of misunderstanding of what the genre is and like what bands are actually, what bands actually are Grindcore. You see a lot of videos on YouTube like, it's like best grindcore bands ever, most brutal grindcore bands, and like generally 99.8% of the bands listed on those videos are not grindcore. They're more like, I guess, what I would like to call brutal deathcore, brutal with two O's or zeros. Alright. And I guess this is just a instructional history video on what grindcore is, what it came from, where it came from, so forth. Grindcore started in the the mid to late 80s as a genre of music that was very inspired by the Bay Area thrash scene, what little there was of death metal at the time, and especially the very fast and aggressive hardcore punk bands like Discharge, Crass. Characteristics of grindcore are very fast drumming, large dominant drum beat is the blast beat, credited, and named by Napalm Death drummer Mick Harris. Yeah. I think when he first invented it, it was more like a, cymbal snare, just played really fast with some kick drum in there. And yeah, that was the blast beat. The music is very, very fast, and it has to be very fast. Speed and grindcore go together, like this. And if you separate the two, then they get very sad and lonely, and they just want to wither away. And it's a tragic, actually. First groundbreaking grindcore bands were Napalm Death, Repulsion, Terrorizer, a little less obscure band called Asocial. Check them out if you haven't heard them. And their sound was a culmination of all of these influences, especially the hardcore stuff, and some of the death metal, which you can hear in Repulsion's first album, Horrified. But yeah, so that little scene went on. Napalm Death are generally credited as being the inventors of grindcore. They came out in Birmingham in 1985, I believe. I don't know. Yeah. Birmingham, same place as Black Sabbath. But, sorry, I'm sick. But yeah, so that was grindcore. Really fast, hardcore fueled music. And this genre progressed, as it does, into the 90s. And like all genres of music, it evolves. And it took on more of a dominant metal influence. Like Napalm Death in the 90s started steering more away from the grindcore beginnings and went more into death metal. A lot of more of the death grind bands came out in the 90s. Brutal Truth were especially doing that. And then you got some of the gore grind bands from Sweden, and Carcass especially. Pretty much one of the founders of the gore grind style. They're ripped off so much. There's first two albums, Symphonies of Sickness and I forget the other one. That's and Regurgitate, and so on and so forth. People, the thing that pisses me off is that I've talked to a few people like this too. When they say they like grindcore, they mention bands like Waking the Cadaver and, other fuck band. And like, it pisses me off that people think that that is grindcore, because that's like the worst example of what grindcore is mistaken for. You know, Waking Cadaver is one of the worst bands I've ever heard. Period. All right, and like, and like, there's all these lists and stuff. You know, not to get all pissy about like these young kids, like, you know, and their misconceptions of what grindcore is, and they're putting up YouTube videos, and no. You know, but it's just like, learn, you know. Read this book, Choosing Death, Choosing Death, The Improbable History of Death Metal and Grindcore. I think it's written by the dude who, like the editor-in-chief of Decibel magazine or something. It's a fantastic book. It's a nice read. You can probably get through it in like 3 days if you really stick to it. And yeah, it's just filled to the brim with the whole history and a lot of great bands. And at the end, actually, there's a like an album guide of necessary bands or albums you should check out. What's grindcore and what isn't grindcore? Napalm Death is grindcore. Early Napalm Death is grindy, as grind as you can get. Waking the Cadaver is not grindcore. Insect Warfare is grindcore. Job for a Cowboy is not grindcore. Repulsion is grindcore. Like all those brutal deathcore bands are not grindcore. Terrorizer, Insect Warfare, Rotten Sound, Nasum, Pig Destroyer. What else do we got here? Magruder Grind. You know, all these great bands. Check them out. And yeah, that's just about it. Peace.